All right, we're recording now. Ject words, part two. Hopefully, you have watched part one. If not, I'll leave a link up there, one of those places over there. I'll leave a link to part one. You can watch that if you would like. But let's talk a little bit about the words we've already studied. We got dejected, we have eject, we have injection, which I got yesterday. My arm is still a little sore, but I did get an injection yesterday. Jettison, we talked about. Projectile, this was in part one. Just pretty much anything that's being thrown can be called a projectile. But if you see that picture, it's often in war, like a bullet can be called a projectile. But even in like the classroom, if somebody, throws a pin, it's a pin now. It's not a projectile, but once it's been thrown, it's suddenly a projectile. But a projector is something different. Um, all the classrooms are using them. I actually have one here. I'm all hooked up, so I can't really turn it. Excuse me. But there is a projector in here. It's probably not a difficult word for most of you. We use it all the time. But I just want you to remember ject means throw. Reject, to throw something out because it's broken. And oftentimes, something gets rejected because it's not good enough. Sometimes you can buy things a little bit cheaper because they're rejects. They didn't quite meet the standards. I have some socks that are rejects. They still work fine, but the stitching might be a little off, but they've been rejected. They've been thrown out because they weren't good enough to be sold at full price, but they're still okay for me. Basketball, they use reject all the time. Somebody tries to make a basket and then they are rejected. Maybe I think I talked about last time being rejected when you ask someone out on a date. The next one is subject. So if you think of kings and queens, they have subjects. Sub actually means below, like submarine. It goes below the water. So subject means to literally throw yourself under. It doesn't have to be actually literally, but you are below that person. So I think of a king and a queen, and they have their subjects. So the king and the queen are higher up, subjects are below. Sometimes we'll say, let's say there's a game on Friday night, but it could be subject to change. Subject to change, like maybe the time will change, maybe the venue where it's being played will be changed. So when something is subject to change, it's below whatever else is happening. Maybe there's another more important game going on at the same time or something like that. Trajectory. So when talking about that pen being thrown across the room, the path that it takes, and you can see right here with this little frog, the path that it takes is the trajectory. Trajectory. So a lot of times when somebody's launching a rocket and trying to get to Mars or whatever, they will calculate the correct trajectory for that rocket. Trajectory. Projectiles will have a trajectory. Next one is notorious. The way I think of this is famous, but for a bad reason. I think that picture is of Justin Bieber. So I don't know if he's exactly notorious. I mean, I think the guy has some talent, probably not so popular with your age group anymore. But at one time, Justin Bieber was pretty popular and he was famous. But at one time, he might have been famous for the wrong reasons. Originally, he was famous because he had a lot of talent. Then he got into some trouble. So maybe he became notorious. But I think he's now like famous for a good reason. A lot of times criminals will become notorious. Famous for a bad reason. Notorious. Hope that helps. Barren, empty. And if you look at that picture, I mean, that's a barren piece of land. Empty. You could also maybe talk about a movie theater as being barren. Right now, we really can't go to the movies. So those seats are pretty barren. I don't think there are a lot of people sitting in those seats. They're pretty empty. Hypothermia. Be careful. Hypothermia. The big part of this, well, therm means heat. Therm. If something is thermal, like some thermal gloves, they will keep your hands warm. Hypo means under. Hyper means above. So you can get hyperthermia. Hyperthermia, that means your body is getting too hot. And I hope you're watching this because on the quiz, there might be one question that gets a little tricky. Know that hypo is underneath. Sometimes you might hear of a hypodermic needle. Derm, that means skin. A hypodermic needle goes under the skin. So yesterday when I got my injection, there was a hypodermic needle there. Like it went under my skin. So hypothermia is when the body temperature gets too low. Hyperthermia, like if a person's really hyper, they have a lot of energy. If somebody has hyperthermia, they sound so close, don't they? Hyperthermia means the body temperature is getting too hot. Hypothermia, too low, cold stuff. And the last one, cohorts. You might, before 2020, this word wasn't as popular. Sometimes teachers would form cohorts and work on different things, but you might hear now of cohort A, cohort B when going to school. So a cohort, you probably know really well, is just a group of people who are banded together. So right now, this is Thursday, Friday. So coming into school is cohort B. On Monday and Tuesday of next week, it'll be cohort A. How's that? Pretty good? Hope so. So, another 7-minute lesson. So if you watch part 1 and part 2, 14 minutes, you'll know all these words. All right, I hope that helps.